Welcome, everyone, to the captive audience. I'm Kevin Hoare. It is about 6:15, starting a little bit late today, but it is a live show. And we got a lot to cover. There's so much going on here in Oregon and nationally. One thing I'm not going to talk about at all is the kidnapping of Savannah Guthrie's mother, Nancy, because that is all the news is talking about. And I can tell you, this is one of the most dangerous things that happens in the news. Is that I think you probably remember years ago how it happened with other stories like O.J. Simpson or, um, where the media becomes completely consumed, especially when there's a tie to a famous person um, in the story. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And then literally every story speculating, talking about, watching video, and thinking about it as if it's a true crime show live. I'm not going to talk about that because there's a lot of stuff happening and you're likely to miss it unless I talk about it right now. So, anyway, um, this is this is really the next big thing that's happening here in the state of Oregon, which is the state legislative session is they're debating a bill called Senate Bill 1599, which is trying to move the gas tax referendum that over 250,000 people signed a petition uh, referring this to the ballot so that they could actually make the decision themselves if they wanted to have this tax increase that was passed by the state legislature and signed by Governor Kotek um, uh, last fall. And they want to move it from November, which is what it said on the petition, to May. And there was a hearing held on Monday at 1 o'clock. There was a lot of testimony against them. Thousands have been submitting testimony against moving the Oregon gas tax, thousands and thousands of people. And this is only popular at this point with the Democrat leadership in the state house and state senate and Tina Kotek, whose idea it is. However, it's a betrayal of the voters, and it's a betrayal of the people who were trying to send a message that they've just had it with this. They've had it, and so right now, you can actually submit your testimony. And I'm going to post a couple of stories here. Hopefully, you will find these interesting to kind of follow the chronology of what's been happening. And you can see how the liberal mainstream media is covering it, which is they're giving uh, almost criticism-free attention to the Democrats for doing this. They are covering Republicans and what they're saying about it, but and the Democrats have until March 12th to get this bill passed through both houses and signed by the governor in order to make sure that they can meet the deadlines necessary to put this on the May 19th ballot. Uh, it I've seen it done before because it was done with Measure 30 in 2003. It was moved from November to January of 2004. I've seen it done with Measure 66 and 67 back in 2009 when the measure was moved from November of 2010 to January of 2010. And so they've done it before. And I don't know of any legal changes that would prevent them from doing this. They can't cancel it, I don't think, because there is a legal decision from the 1930s, actually, by the Attorney General back then that prohibited canceling a referendum by simply repealing the law that upon which it was based. However, moving it appears to have a history, and Lori, unfortunately, I think they will probably follow through. However, you can contact some of the members that uh, who are likely yes votes and try to talk them out of it. So Senator Jama, Representative Gomberg, Senator Pham, and Representative Chosen are worth contacting. And Jason Williams has pointed this out, as well as supplied you some testimony that they submitted in case you want to read that before you submit yours. And now let me post the KATU story, which you know doesn't really it basically treats it as an innocuous thing that the Democrats are doing, even though it's a betrayal. Here's the story in the Statesman Urinal, as Lars Larson calls it. Thousands submit testimony against moving the gas tax vote. So at least they did represent in that article that there was pretty overwhelming testimony against moving it. There were, as of 5:40 p.m. on February 9th, yesterday, 3,510 pieces of written testimony have been submitted, overwhelming the majority in opposition. And so overwhelmingly from the majority in opposition. And there's testimony from candidates like Chris Dudley for governor and several others. And I think we're going to see how this plays out because they didn't listen last time and they're promising not to listen again. Do I have information on Kotek's latest push for ranked choice voting? No, I don't. I know that there's a talk about passing a bill, a joint resolution, to create an open primary system that would be on the ballot for voters to decide if they want to do that, which would force Republicans, would deprive them of effectively of ballot access unless they run their own primary election. And it was same with Democrats. So it'd have others essentially deciding who the nominees were that would get to the ballot. And actually, the polling isn't supporting doing this. This is what I saw yesterday. Let me see if I can find that article for you because, yeah, here we go. Oregon open primary ballot proposal would change how voters pick candidates. We've seen how Democrats like to change the election system to improve it when it doesn't need improvement in order to improve it for them. And that's what they would like to do. They would like it so that elections like for governor could end up with just two Democrats running against each other and no Republicans. That's what they would like. Anyway, coming back to the gas tax, here's where you can go to submit your testimony against Senate Bill 1599. This may not be the last thing you hear about tonight that you want to submit testimony against. And I hope that that you do take a look at giving that testimony, but there's more. Yes, there is more. Democrats are looking at disconnecting Oregon's tax code from the federal tax code. Why? Because they want to negate and take back hundreds of millions of dollars in tax relief that bill would that the one big beautiful bill at the federal level would allow state taxpayers in Oregon also to enjoy. Right now, if you have a taxable income amount at the federal level, that's the starting point for your taxable income amount in the state of Oregon. They want to disconnect it so that some of the tax breaks would go away, if not all of them. There's still talk about all of them. And by the way, some of these tax breaks that were given by the big beautiful bill, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. I think they all have income caps, but they would specifically be targeted for tax relief for working class people and fixed income. In addition, there's some tax breaks that they do plan to take away. One of them, which is obviously for working class people, the millionaires and billionaires, as um, what's his name from Vermont likes to say, won't be affected by this, but regular folks will be, which is the new federal deduction on interest on car loans. Also, they want to take away some of the tax relief for investors who invest in businesses here in Oregon, because they don't want that. They don't want people investing in businesses here, and they're doing a great job of driving them out. And so Nancy Nathanson, a Democrat from Eugene, who's the chair of the House Revenue Committee, is proposing Senate Bill 1507. They're calling it the disconnect bill. And this is going to stick it to businesses as well in this state, a state which has a hard time holding on to them. So let me post the article here so you can see what, yeah, Bernie, exactly, Lori, Bernie Sanders. What did you put? Oh, Bob, why are they trying to put anything on the ballots? The Democrats aren't listening. Well, I don't know. I think actually the vote in May is going to be resound. If it does happen in May instead, it'll be resoundingly against the tax increase. But then they will just simply start over talking about how they're going to cut ODOT employment and not find ways that accommodate the people's priorities, which is what they should do. This is what you get with Democrats. They slaughter the sacred lambs. They go after the people and the policies that people want, and they fund the ones they don't want and tell you they've run out of money and they can't help it. By the way, here's another article. Democrats bill to add $300 million to Oregon's budget. So what they want to do is they want to take back the tax breaks enabled by the One Big Beautiful bill and then go spend it. Yet they're telling us they don't have enough money for all the things they need to spend money on, and they're going to have to face cuts in important programs if we don't hold on to the gas tax increase, which is what's insane here. Is then why are they going to spend the money they say they're going to take back from tax relief for Oregonians and for businesses and investors here in the state of Oregon? And no, we do know on the May ballot there will be a governor's race. I don't know if there will be any other statewide initiatives. In fact, I'm pretty sure there won't be. But we do know that there tend to be tax levies and that kind of thing on the May ballot. So there might be some of that locally. But there will be the governor's race and all the other races where a nominee is being decided for the general election. And yeah, that's right, Bobby. So they want to spend $600 million on renovating the Moda Center so that the Portland Trailblazers will stay in Oregon. But they don't have money to fill potholes, fix roads, and they say they're running out of money for a bunch of other things, but they're going to have money for that. So, and I like the Trailblazers. I want them to stay. But a state that has put itself in these financial straits and has a weakening economy compared to the rest of the country is much weaker. The unemployment's nearly a percentage point higher. The businesses are leaving. The growth is slowing. And then they're running out of money to go and pay for all the pet projects that they ran up the score on during COVID and say they can't possibly live without. And now they want to go spend money on that. I think that this is a state that just doesn't know how to live within its means and figures they can always come back and take another pound of flesh out of us or make the business climate even worse and drive people out of the state that way. So let me see. I'm going to go ahead and I'll post this article, which is an Oregonian article about it. Well, this is the problem is, Marjorie, is that we are electing at the ballot box people who then go and do these things and don't listen to the voters and then the voters are stuck having to fix it. The best way to fix it would be to get rid of the people at the ballot box who are making us do this stuff over and over and aren't listening. And it's high time that we do that. There is a bill that wants to go and steal the kicker, yes, and put half of it into, like, they want to split it with us. We're going to split. We'll go halvesies. We'll go Dutch with you on the kicker, when really the kicker should be all yours. But they want to take half of it and put it in a fund that they'll go and waste on things that they'll tell us they don't have enough money for in the future. So, see, I thought some costs are shared by county, state, and federal. Oh yeah, well there are. And in the transportation bill, what they want to do is take the money that they're getting and use it to go and get federal matching dollars for transportation projects. But they shouldn't do that by deprioritizing road maintenance. They should paint the lines on the road, not tell us they can't do it if we don't give them more tax money. And that's what they've been doing. They've been threatening us. And it's time that they feel like their political futures are threatened, not our physical lives and safety, which is actually what they are more than happy to do all the time. Now, this is going to get worse as the session goes on, but maybe some Democrats won't go for it. I think there's at least a couple Democrats that are on the fence about voting for this who weren't thrilled with the original bill that did pass. And I think we're going to have to see if those Democrats step up and take action. Now, there's an editorial in the Oregonian that says the legislature sets business up for another hit. And it refers to Senate Bill 1507 that we just talked about. They're going to inflict more misery on businesses, and they don't care. I don't know where they think the money is going to come from or the jobs in the future if they keep making the business climate worse and driving businesses out and then adding more pain to those businesses. But this is what they're going to do. There's also they're going to really hurt people who need to buy cars, who thought they might be getting a tax break, and now they're going to end up having to pay state taxes on that income instead. And so this is the same thing over and over. And you know, anybody who's voting for the people that are making these tax breaks go away and these tax increases happen, and then go and spending all of it, they need to think about whether they are not paying attention to the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, which is that legislators and the governor will listen to you. They aren't. And so, yeah, that's a big deal. Here's the story about the Moda Center. You know, I understand why a building like that needs renovation. I understand why the Trailblazers might want that. And why the people who are investing in it don't want to spend the money on it if they can get a city or a locality to do it. But the financial and economic situation in the state has been hurt to the point that that we can't afford luxury items like that, and that's what it's turned into. You know, so really, it's possible that the Trailblazers may leave, and they won't be able to, because they want to redirect income taxes from the state's general fund directly to a new fund dubbed the Oregon Arena Fund. That's what they want to do. And these are your income taxes that they say they don't have enough of already for the things that they're wasting it on now. So prepare to pay higher taxes. This is just another sleight of hand. And I don't know that if they think that this is a really great way to get people to feel good about them, but they haven't got the message that Oregon is unaffordable, and they haven't gotten the message that the cost of living needs to come down, and they should stop making it worse by raising taxes. Little political news. I can see here Chris Dudley, who announced that he's running for governor, uh, talked a little bit about his race, and I'll just post I haven't had time to watch the interview. He ran last in 2010, lost to John Kitzhaber by I think it was 27,000 votes. It was a close race. He was winning at night, losing in the morning, typical thing. Of course, many of you probably heard about our frequent guest, Representative Ed Deal, who's declared that he's running for governor. We talked about it, I think, the last week or so on the show, and then of course Christine Drazan, who declared last fall, and she's a state senator who is in the state legislature right now at the short session, but she's also campaigning for governor. And then there's Danielle Bethel, who is Marion County Commissioner. She was one of the earliest major candidates to declare that she was running, and she is still running. I think she's faced some negative press stories, and I think she's trying to battle through that. But those are, from what I have seen, the four major candidates. David Medina, friend of the program and of many Republicans in the state, has also declared that he's running very much of a grassroots campaign. But on the other hand, I don't know. I haven't got a chance to look at his fundraising numbers, but they're all going to need money to compete once it comes down to the ballot here, which, by the end of April, you'll be receiving a ballot to help decide who the next Republican gubernatorial nominee is. And this is an interesting piece of news, which I think I might have mentioned some about last week. So in the races for Congress here in Oregon, the Oregon Capital Chronicle covered this. They reported how much is being raised by all the members of Congress and the U.S. Senate. Merkley's got a bunch of money. He's got the most money, I guess. He raised $1.2 million, and he's got a lot of money in the bank, $6 million. And so Wyden is not up this time. He's up in 2028. But Jeff Merkley is running again. In the congressional races, in the 5th district, that's one of the major races from 2022 that Lori Chavez Dreamer won. And then she lost her reelection bid in 2024 to Janelle Bynum. Janelle Bynum has raised about $500,000, and she has $1.8 million in her campaign fund. Patty Adair, who's probably, just in terms of money, the top candidate, challenging Bynum and competing for the Republican nomination, is a Deschutes County commissioner, and she raised $185,000 in the fourth quarter, and she's got $173,000 left after expenses, and so she's got a lot to do to catch up. The big news is that in Oregon's 4th congressional district, I don't know who's running against Merkley. I heard Joe Ray Perkins, but I don't know who else. And Joe Ray's run several times, and I honestly don't know how that's going to turn out, but there might be other candidates. I have not had time to look into that one, but let me tell you, Oregon's 4th congressional district is described as another competitive race. The district covers Eugene, Corvallis, Roseburg, all of the coast from Lincoln County down to the California border, Curry County, and Val Hoyle, who's the incumbent, raised $135,000 and spent $97,000 of it, and has $386,000 on hand. Meanwhile, Monique Despain, who's the challenger and 2024 nominee, Hoyle's top competitor, raised, get this, $395,000, nearly 3 times what Val Hoyle raised. And she's also catching up with Hoyle on cash on hand, which is just stunning. That is an absolute blockbuster fourth quarter for Monique Despain. So, uh, uh, congratulate her and keep an eye on her race, because when that kind of thing happens, that tends to bring a lot of focus of national attention on what's going on, and people start to look at that race as something that's going to be in the spotlight going into the fall. Um, Val Hoyle does have four primary competitors. Not all of them have filed yet on the ballot, but they've filed with the FEC. And the most prominent one of those is Melissa Bird. She's a social worker and a life coach, who is running against Hoyle in the Democratic primary. She raised $8,300 last quarter and spent $9,300. It's got $3,100 on hand, so she just really doesn't have a lot of money, and she's the main challenger in the primary. Um, and Val Hoyle probably isn't paying a lot of attention to her, but heck, I don't know. And then Andre Salinas in the 6th district, which has been a competitive district in the last two election cycles when Mike Erickson ran against her, raised 193,000, spent 156, and has 506,000 remaining. Her main opponent at this point appears to be Republican David Russ, who didn't report any fundraising funds raised or spent, but has $7,000 in his campaign fund. So probably very far behind. And then the other races, Suzanne Bonamici, Maxine Dexter, and Cliff Bentz, they're largely safe districts. There are people who have filed for some of these districts, but they each won in 2024 with more than 60% of the vote or more. And they each raised some money, but it really doesn't matter because they're not really facing any consequential challenge. There are 3 Democrats that have filed to run to compete for the Democrat nomination to challenge Bentz, and they've raised 16,000, 13,000, and 3,800 respectively. You can imagine that the impact of that is going to be pretty muted in that race. So anyway, Oregon's lone Republican member of Congress is probably in a good position at this point. Here's some interesting news. So there was a letter that was circulated by mayors in Oregon to challenge, to demand that ICE leave their jurisdictions and leave the state. And it was signed. It wasn't signed by any Republican mayors that I'm aware of. There were definitely some Democrats, but there were also some prominent mayors, Democrat mayors, who did not join and sign that. One of them is the Corvallis mayor, and I can't remember his name right now, and I can't read this article because it's behind a paywall. So if you have access, great. But Alex Johnson in Albany, known as a moderate Democrat, did not join to sign this. I did read an article earlier today that the Springfield mayor, Sean Van Gordon, who some say is a moderate, he appears at every one of Jeff Merkley and Val Hoyle's town halls. But they claim that he missed the deadline to sign the letter, whatever that means. So I guess we'll see, but it has not been unanimously embraced by Democrats. And it is, of course, absurdly stupid that they're calling for ICE to no longer remove public safety threats from their communities, which, of course, when those people are arrested and booked here in Oregon, our lax bail laws allow those people to get out pretty easily. And if they're illegal immigrant criminals, they have actually a history of just departing the jurisdiction. Some, even if they're gang members, they just flee back across the border to their country, and no one gets prosecuted for the crimes. So that's what these folks are calling for. And now Oregon lawmakers in Salem, Democrats, are proposing criminal penalties. They're trying to ban the ability of ICE agents to have their identities not uh, doxed. They would like them to be doxed, and they would like their families to be terrorized because they want them to no longer wear any masks. The party that loves making sure that Antifa can wear masks as much as they want and commit crimes does not want to allow law enforcement who will be doxxed and terrorized by Antifa and others. They want to pass a state law. And what's funny about it is it's absurd because it's going to have absolutely no effect. Because I can guarantee right now in California, a law that was passed similar to this has been placed on hold by a federal judge because of what's called the supremacy clause. And there's also legal precedent behind it when it's been adjudicated that the states cannot make laws that impair or impede uh, federal law enforcement operating in their jobs and their roles as federal law enforcement. And so it's just virtue signaling, and it's the legislative equivalent of going and screaming F ICE. And that's what Democrats do. They encourage others to do it, and they encourage them to the point that these people think that when they get out there, they can riot and bust windows, and they are. Um, there has been there's some proposals at the federal level. Democrats are demanding, in order to fund the Department of Homeland Security, they're demanding things like, no masks for ICE agents, that they'll need a judicial warrant every time they go and try to find and arrest an illegal alien criminal that they're seeking. And labor unions that once opposed illegal immigration because it undermines the and dilutes the pay, undermines the compensation for union members, are now all for it. So go figure. It turns out, by the way, that national polls are affirming that Americans prefer President Trump's policies on immigration to those of Joe Biden. 52% prefer Trump's handling of the issue, 33% absurdly prefer Biden's. And Biden's policy was an open border and 650,000 criminals allowed into the country. 15% said they weren't sure. Yeah. So anyway, let's see. Marjorie, you said, my husband was a deputy. Someone found out our phone number and called me and scared me to death. Had to leave my house with my two small kids. Washington County was right on top of this. Yeah, and that's because Washington County is on top of this. And the current prosecutor in Multnomah County would be on top of it too. But the people at the state level, not so much. Plus, they're the ones who put into place the lax bail laws that, they're not going to do anything to repeal or reform, that are actually putting everyone in this terrible position. So just to be aware of that, that's the story. And I hope that that you're actually able to follow what's happening. There's some frightening stuff, by the way, when it comes. There's a guy, and I'm just going to post this here, and you can take a look at it. So somebody recently was arrested in Minnesota because he specifically made threats and encouraged others to engage in violence against federal agents. He was arrested and he's being prosecuted. Well, take a look at this guy. He's a leftist extremist that Andy No uncovered, who I believe it was on TikTok. Yeah, on TikTok, he went on and he gave his encouragement for what it strongly implied you have to do more than just protest and shout. You have to physically interfere with, and in this case, use firearms against federal agents and officers. And the guy claims to be training people on a weekly basis in Eugene, Oregon. So you should take a look at that. They have decided that they're going to use violence against ICE in Eugene. And of course, this is a place where the local electeds say that actually people are only peacefully protesting. and everything's fine. So this sounds, if you've seen this movie before and heard this before, yes, this is George Floyd, the Redux. And, I think politically it could work out just as badly for Democrats as that did. Because even though that did try to impact the 2020 election, I think actually it ultimately turned out to be a big, fat political loser for the Democrats, to the point where they were all running away from this insane and scary proposition that they called all police racist, and everyone who is in law enforcement racist. I wanted to share this with you too, because speaking of fraud and crime, uh, in California, that should have said amazing. The A got cut off when I pasted it. But the Small Business Administration is suspended 111,620 California borrowers suspected of being involved with nearly $8.6 billion in fraud. It's the PPP money that was dispensed during COVID to businesses and people claiming to have businesses. And it was done with little or no scrutiny. So there's massive fraud. And if California did this, then let's just say Oregon is 10% the size of California. 10% the size of California means that we have at least $860 million of such fraud here. And given Oregon's reputation, we might disproportionately have even more. It's possible. But we should have around 11,000 people that might be facing this similar suspension. Yes, and this is the SBA, Small Business Administration. So it's not going to require our idiot attorney general or governor to do anything to jump on this. They're taking it straight from the federal level. By the way, I do want to be fair and say that Christine Drazen has launched a fraud, waste, and abuse tip line, which you can check out. And I think this is something everybody's starting to pay more and more attention to. But if you'd like to check that out or suggest it to somebody, go have a look. This is something I know that candidates like Monique Despain and Ed Deal talk about constantly, and actually cite specific instances that they are going after and trying to expose. We don't have a lot of help from the federal level that we know of yet, but there you go. The people who are seeking your support to represent us, represent the Republican Party in the general election, represent us by winning the general election, are on top of this. And I think that's a very important and good thing. Oregon lawmakers are going to pass criminal penalties for alarming and threatening public officials. Apparently, they don't think that that's necessary when it comes to threatening law enforcement. They're totally fine with that, but they are trying to make it a felony to make a threatening a public official, including a candidate for public office, and they want to make it a crime of aggravated harassment. Now, look, I don't have a problem with if it's a crime, if it's a threat that somebody can actually make good on, or has a reasonable chance of advancing that. I think that can be argued that is not free speech anymore. There are examples of this, like people threaten the president, and there's also consequences for that. And I don't think that anybody should be threatening candidates and public officials. But I do ask why they have the double standard about the similar threats that are being made, like the example I just gave you of this guy in Eugene, against people who are just there to do their jobs as directed lawfully by the President of the United States and our federal agencies of law enforcement. James Manning talks about how he was the victim of a bomb threat. And no, bomb threats are not free speech. Even yelling fire in a crowded theater is not free speech. And so, which is the typical law school mental experiment that they always like to refer to. Lori Chavez Dreamer received a bomb threat in 2024. Uh, there are so many people that think it's okay to do this. The problem is it's been the elected officials who just don't seem to be able to get people to cease the violent activity by using rhetoric that actually states that you have to fight and resist fascism and Nazis. I mean, just by using those descriptions of their political opponents, what they are doing is they're saying you're not worth having alive. And so, therefore, followers, go do what you got to do to make your voice heard and take care of those guys and stand up and resist them, which obviously has led to some people uh, interpreting that quite so easily as a call to violence, especially when they commit acts of violence and those elected officials say that's not violence, that's peaceful protest. So, yeah, there's a problem here. I think that that the same elected officials who don't like having threats against them should take just as seriously threats being made against law enforcement and against regular folks who stand up and express their free speech and then get targeted. Um, that's an important thing, and I hope that they take that seriously too. That should be part of this debate. Um, by the way, the Oregon Farm Workers Union is calling on Congress to deny DH funding to ICE. So the group Piñeros y Campesinos Unidos del Noreste, uh, that's PCUN, they want to defund law enforcement. I think the Democrats should try to hold as many votes and advocate as often as possible for defunding law enforcement so we can see what they really are, which is they're just no different than the Democrats who wanted to defund law enforcement in 2020 that everyone rejects, that is reasonable and law abiding. Um, and this group, whose name uh, is hard to pronounce to begin with, uh, doesn't seem to have the best interests of American citizens at heart and doesn't give a flying crap about whether or not it's only citizens that decide whether or not people who run across the border illegally can remain here. But there are Democrat leaders who are siding with them, and so keep that in mind. They want to defund law enforcement. And I think this is something we're going to hear and learn more about in the coming weeks. Anyway, it's a lot of news to cover tonight. I hope I hit all the treetops. And there was a story that I haven't had a chance to watch yet about Oregon athletes face backlash after political remarks at the Olympics. Yeah, I'll post it here for you. You can go watch it. Bottom line is, don't be stupid. Just compete. Just compete and win. And be humble and love and respect your country. Don't lecture us. Don't talk about politics when you're on this. I don't want them to talk about stuff that I would agree with or stuff that I disagree with. They're stupid if they talk about politics up there. They should talk about how they plan to excel at what they're doing, and when they don't, that they're going to do better next time, and that they should recognize that the people who sent them there that they're representing deserve their respect as well. Yep, the brainwashed are alive and well. I think some of them don't have brains to be washed, in all honesty. And yeah, I know they backtrack, but they just can't control themselves sometimes, I guess. And they shouldn't pretend to be experts on any of this stuff. Anyway, there we go. That's tonight's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with everyone you can. I'm working on getting some guests, but my state representative guests that often come on are super busy right now with the state legislative session. So maybe I might get a show with one of them pre-recorded. I'm also reaching out to some of our other regulars. And in the meantime, keep fighting the good fight. Let people know what's happening. Share this with everyone you can. Get your testimony in. It's so easy to do online. You can do it in a minute, and you can make your voice heard and add your voice to the thousands that are standing up and doing the right, resisting the governor's wishes the right way, which is using our voices to speak out and tell our legislators what our wishes are, and tell them no to raising taxes and spending and damaging our economy. Anyway, have a great night, and we'll talk to you again on the next episode of the Captive Audience. Should be Don and Leslie tomorrow night. Have a good one.